Before we do that, be aware that you did receive, we did put out through the Coconut Wireless a executive summary. The same thing to those who participated. You received the executive summary through email as well. The summary you're looking at today is a more fuller, it's what they call the final report, but you're not going to see all of it. Some of that I did not include because it dealt with next steps in terms of some internal stuff. Here are people to talk to who might be leaders of the campaign, and here are these type of things. So I felt that was more internal, more than external for in terms of understanding of the feasibility study and what it has indicated to us about both the ability to raise funds and some of the issues within the conference as well. So that's why you won't see that those portions, but you'll see all the other portions as well. The conference leadership did vote this past or 2 weekends ago to move forward with the capital campaign. So hence you're seeing now this deeper feasibility study. You'll see when we get to the end, you'll see most, we don't have this in a slide form, so it's on a page. So you're going to see some empty pages. That's the stuff that deals with that more internal, how you set up a campaign type of stuff. But you'll see toward the end of our next steps. And I'm going to say upfront now that the capital campaign itself is probably still a good year out from before we kick that off formally. So by the time we get to the ending, you'll understand that a little bit more as to why, where we're at in terms of donor development and some steps that need to be take place before we kick off the capital campaign itself. So thank you. If you could either raise up questions as we go through, I'm happy to do that. I don't know all the answers because I didn't do the study itself, but I'll give you the answers as best as I understand them from CCS. If you want to wait till we're done and ask questions then, that's fine too. Either way works for me. I'm now going to attempt to share my screen and hopefully we'll get this up and going. Do you all see a blue piece that says Hawaii Conference of the United Church of Christ Feasibility Study Final Report? Somebody shout out. Yes. All right. Yay. We're cooking. Things are finally working. Yay. I get concerned about here. Let's see if I can broaden this up then. So as I said, the report was done by CCS study team. We worked with Ted Blackman, who's the managing director, Rick Happy, who's the managing director. He's the one we were mainly in contact with around setting up the feasibility study. And then Alcy, who of course did the interviews for us and did the interpretation. She pulled the data together and did the interpretation of data for us as well. So you know that. On our side, the we are myself, Andy Bunn, Julie Buto, who did a lot of work in communicating and emailing and things like that, as well as Lori, who did work with some of the data questions that were being asked to help refine what these, when they say this, what does that mean type of questions. So we appreciate everybody's participation on this side within the office. I appreciate those that did it and within the CCS team as well. So here are the objectives of the study, right? To assess organizational readiness for a campaign, to gauge reactions to the preliminary case study that you all looked at. I'll talk in a moment about where those figures and those priorities came from, to discover prospective donors and campaign leaders and volunteers. This is the part here that I left off today because that's the more internal piece that's yet to be discussed within the leadership of the conference. Uncover perceptions about the conference and about the foundation throughout the community. The community here is the conference at large. Identify potential issues or obstacles to success and test the preliminary campaign goal, determine feasibility of goal, and timeline. You will not see a timeline either because their timeline and our timeline were very different. So we already tossed that one out. So you won't see a timeline either. We went with another direction. So here's the methodology. There was the development of the study materials. This began in September, you'll see there. And the study materials was both in terms of our case study, that initial case study that was pulled together by Andy and myself, and as well as who's going to be interviewed and who's in things of that nature. So that's that initial material. The data analysis, which begins with the interviews and the e-survey. How did we decide who got interviewed? Well, I think good old Spirit decided that for us. We developed a list of names of 100 people that we drew from those who have participated in AHA Pa'ainas over the past, I think we went back 5 or 7 years, and then those who were association leaders, right? So if you served in association leadership, and I think we went back, again, because of COVID, we went back, I think, 5 years on that too. So that's where that initial list of 100 names came from for interviews. They further asked us to narrow that down to about 75 people, which became a very difficult task, but we did, and then they turned around and opened it back up to the 100. So that all worked out as very good. The e-surveys, the third group that we pulled from, and this was primarily around the e-surveys, was the Friends of the Conference annual appeal, those who participate in that. And again, we went back 5 or 7 years of looking for names, including the names that had been drawn up for the interviews, but could not participate, could not find the time to participate in the interview. So they were also sent an e-survey if they did not participate in the interviews. So we see here the strategic conversation. Those are the interviews and the surveys that took place. And the electronic survey there, that pushed us into November, December. You see in November, there was an interim report that was in-house that was presented to myself, Andy Bunn, and Julie Buto, who were the 3 kind of key members of the internal team, just to see where things were going, get a sense of directions and some trends that may emerge. So hear that, they may emerge. Some trends did emerge, some trends did not. And then finally, the final report was brought together in January 13, and was presented to the leaders of the conference, both the council and the board of trustees for the foundation, at our meeting in February. At that time, we sat with the information and then came back to our most recent meeting in March to make a decision whether to move forward with the campaign or not. And as I said, the decision has been made to move forward with the campaign. It'll be significantly different than what you saw in that original case study. And it'll be significantly different because of the responses to the study. So that's what we're going to look at now. Here are the study participants. Those in white are those who were interviewed, and those in blue are those who responded via the e-survey. So you can see a number of people that were involved. And if you were one of those people, let me say thank you. We appreciate your candidness and your honestness. That's what they were looking for and what we needed in order to understand, if we were to do a capital campaign, how best to go about doing that. So thank you for your time and participation in this. Here you see how they categorize people here. I'm not quite sure exactly how all of this categorization speaks to, but you'll see that the orange here is the e-survey, and the blue are the personal interviews. Donor here, I'm assuming, means these are people from that were identified through the Friends of the Conference list. They would have used the term donor to designate those people. Otherwise, you see board, a clergy member, a congregant. I personally would have put donors under congregant myself, and I'm not quite sure who friend or other stand for. We did, because I do not think we identified anybody that was outside of the conference. But anyway, you'll see how they broke that down there. And then you'll see how they're broken down in terms of a number of years as being part of the conference. So 15 plus years, 11 to 15 years, 5 to 10 years, 1 to 4, and then 1 year or less as members of the conference. 1 year or less, actually the 1 to 4 years really puts us into the COVID years, right? So understand that that's playing out in that lower piece there. So how was the study, who from where was a part of the study? So over here, this part of the study indicates the islands, right? So, and these, by the way, this is the participants, not those who were asked, but those who actually participated. So you'll see that 46% was off of the island of Oahu, 20% Hawaii, 17% Kauai, 14% Maui, 2% Molokai, 1% Lanai. How did that break down by association? 35% of the responders were Oahu Association, 25% AHEC, 17% Kauai, 13% Hawaii Island, and 10% Tri-Isle Association. That doesn't quite match up our populations across the association, but it does closely resemble those populations. So that was a good turnout. And then we see here, oh, I'm sorry, this is who was asked. And then this is who participated. So we see that breaks out roughly the same amount of people participated as was asked. And you see how that is broken down by island. Unfortunately, we did not have anybody off Lanai participate in the surveys or in the personal interviews. So here are the interview findings. So these, what we're going to look at now are the findings by those who did the personal interviews. Then we'll look at the findings that came out of the e-survey. That's how they have broken them down for us. So the findings are primarily here among these little gold arrows. So I know you can read it for yourself, but I'll read it for you as well. Our respondents were very positive perception. Note their satisfaction of myself and Andy Bunn giving leadership, improved communication and transparency as we have come in and into the positions that we are in. Those with positive perceptions often mention the committed and helpful conference foundation staff. So thank you. We'll pass that praise on to our staff. Mixed perceptions included mentions of diversity in theological, geographical, ethnic, and generational diversity, leading to a lack of unity and consensus. Many also expressed their belief that conference foundations, the conference and foundation, are on upward trajectory. So 44% fall within this positive piece, that's this top one. 35% fell within the mixed piece, that's this bottom one. A very positive was 18%. So if you add the 44 and the 18, you see that people are feeling fairly good about the conference. This last piece here, when asked whether they were satisfied with their involvement with the conference or with the foundation, 93% responded in the affirmative, that they were satisfied. You're satisfied, those who responded, are satisfied with their involvement. So according to ALSI, those are good high marks. They show positivity within the conference and that the conference is on some good standing. Doesn't mean everything's well, but that's overall things are good. So please be aware of that. So perception of conference and foundation by area. These graphs are a little difficult to read. So the areas are community reputations or reputation out there among the congregants, missional teams, programs. So programs would include things like the Aha Pa'aina, the leadership, the church leadership event, or last year when we did the stewardship training, things of that nature. Ministries are those things, ministries that are basically are tied to our budget. Micronesian ministry, there was a line item in the budget. The ministry for small Hawaiian churches, capital help through the State Council of Hawaii Congregational Churches, that's a line item in the foundation budget. And then leadership, of course, reflects upon Andy and myself, as well as the staff and other key leaders, particularly the chair and presidents of our board and our council. So I'll just read here what they've said. The community reputation, respondents note lack of awareness and understanding of the roles of the conference and the foundation and the work that they do. So there's some communication pieces we need to get on, and we're happy to do that. Missional teams, many respondents note that some of these groups are making significant efforts to accomplish their mission while others are not. There's an unevenness among the group, and that's true. Some of our missional teams just have a chair. There is no team there, and some of them had been busy and now taking a bit of a break, so be aware of that. Program-wise, interviewees note lack of participation in conference programs. The ability to get together, you all noted that the Zoom was a good way to help bridge some of that gap. Ministries, interviewees mentioned a need for increasing staff and resources needed to improve ministries. We appreciate that. That's part of what the capital campaign is, at least in its initial thought would be helping with. And then leadership, majority of respondents note the high level of satisfaction of current leadership, citing openness, transparency, responsiveness. Many also note the complex position of leadership in such a diverse conference. So that was the overall areas under study, and these are the takeaway from those areas of study. You'll see here how they broke down per answers in terms of percentages. So please be aware of that. Again, Alcy says, overall, this is typically what they hear of church-related capital campaigns. They worked with the Catholic Church here in Hawaii, as well as the Anglican diocese in Hawaii, and they said this is similar. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but there we are. And I do appreciate the fact that these things are raised up so that we can pay attention to them moving forward. So the strengths of the conference. You'll see here, again, this is broken down by some categories: community, volunteers, staff, and leadership. But one of the strengths are the people of the conference. And I totally agree with that our conference is strong because you, our congregants, are strong. And if we could say we're strong in faith, it's because you are strong in faith, and I want to underline that. You're looking at structure, history, inclusivity, and diversity within the conference. You'll see that the structure is lacking a little piece here, so we need to pay attention to that. Back up here, community, right? We do well within ourselves, but when we're reaching out to the community, we can do better. Connections here, and unfortunately, this got a little split here. So transparency, open, available communications. You'll see how people responded there, that those three are pretty strong. So those are our strengths. I like this first quote here. What we have very committed volunteers in the conference who are in all different positions or participate in different events, planning activities, and ministries. I cannot agree more strongly. That's not my quote, but I cannot agree more strongly with whoever said that, because you, our people, are our strength. And I think this indicates that as well. Moving down then, we look at our challenges within the conference. Our challenges around people, right? The same category, people, conference, connection. So here the challenges are youth, emerging ministries, and leadership development. We particularly paid attention to leadership development this past year with that leadership development workshop that was designed over several meeting periods. But clearly we need to do better. The conference itself, resources, identity, engagement, and outreach. We can see here the things that really need attention are these long bars. So that's where we will be giving some attention as well as to these other areas. And then with connection, the history, trust, and disunity. And of course, we see disunity pop up here. This should be no surprise for anybody who particularly serves in any leadership position within the conference, whether that's in conference or foundation related teams and committees or within associations. You know, that disunity or the feeling of sharp edges is a key piece within the conference that we are seeking to resolve. I know you all know that because before I arrived, you voted on a strategic 10-year strategic plan that has unity as the center of that plan. So that's no news there. I'll just read this top piece here. The future of the conference will depend on the ability of the current and immediate future church leaders to be aware of the big picture and be innovative and open to new things, as opposed to spending all our time and energy trying to return to the past. Again, that's not my quote, but I do appreciate the quote and whoever did say that, because I do think that's a key understanding that we are having to move forward and that's our goal, is to create and find that path forward, but not to return to the past, that's not where our well-being lies. So case for support, and I'm not quite sure exactly what that meant. I know what it means in my head, and I read over the slide and I thought, oh, that may have meant something slightly different for CCS, so we'll fumble through this one. But this is, if you remember, these are the goals for the funds that we were looking at, right? So one was some clergy support, including continuing education. One was new ministry development. One was generations of service, so honoring our retired ministers and being able to help support them in retirement, particularly if their retirements funds fall short. Medical debt payoff program, that was the missional component for the original case study. The legacy properties that the foundation deals with. We have to pay for upkeep, we have to pay taxes, we have to pay, in some cases where there are graveyards, we have to pay for extra attention to graveyards. The spiritual special request funds, that was what in the conference at a large was called the conference ministers discretionary fund. Within the conference, that was fund number one. That was our non-restricted funds from which special requests could be meted out or made out of. That's what I'm trying to say. And then the Papa Makua funding for that position. You will see here how the respondents gave great support for clergy support, great support for new ministry development, and then good support for, or strong support for generations of giving. Then it begins to die off a bit. Medical debt payoff didn't excite anybody as a missional piece. Local or legacy properties excited individuals even less. Special request funds did not even make the 50% threshold, and the Papa Makua came in as the least, which shows here the the funding that was least appreciated by those who were interviewed and those who took the survey. So please be aware of that. And so you'll see that here that shows key concerns and the number of people who mentioned these concerns. So there's the Papa Makua, too much prioritization of property over people, not enough funds to clergy education, too much focus on the past, and of course, the funds did not include a youth component, legacy prophecies around, I lost my place. Legacy properties will not resonate with non-native Hawaiian congregations, and more details needed about how funds will be distributed. That's around that special request funds. Ultimately, this is where I need to step back and do a little background. Why did, in the original case study, did we name these funds? Because when I arrived, these were things that money was already promised to. Money was already promised to continuing clergy support and education. We were working that with the CTEL, Hawaii CTEL program with PSR. The only thing new here was new ministry development. I added that. Generations of service is why I thought about doing a capital campaign to begin with. Before I arrived, this conference pledged $4 million to generations of service. We didn't have $4 million. So if we were going to live into that request or that pledge that we had made, it meant we needed to do a capital campaign. So I was talked with Andy. Andy and I talked with some folks, good folks at the pension boards, and they said, well, if you're going to do a capital campaign for the $4 million, what other money do you need? And so we sat down and began looking at the pledges of money. So the pledges of money was legacy prophecies. That's special request funds, because I know you all still ask money out of it because I still have to say it's not there, and you get angry with me because it's not there, and that's fine. That's life. And the other one was the Papa Makua. When we pulled all of these together, that's where that $20 million comes from. 11 million of it just for the properties, to maintain and keep properties. We would need $11 million that would generate a large enough interest off of to actually do right by the properties. So that's where all that came from. As I said, the only thing new that I added to this was new ministry development, and we pegged that at 500,000 to generate the type of interest that we would need and use, at least in the foreseeable future. So that's where that came from, and that's what you responded to. And we do appreciate that, because the part of the feasibility study is to help us understand, will people give to these things? And the answer to that was no, they won't. And so we heard that loud and clear, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of what some of our next steps is, refining and prioritizing goals. So please be aware of that. So they then went on and looked at the campaign plan. Is $20 million a realistic goal? And you can see here how people answered. 42%, so that's less than 50, yes. 40% unsure. So the answer is, based upon that, oops, I just moved that, looked at that, quit touching things, is no, $20 million is not within our ability to do so. Knowing that, though, should the conference foundation proceed with the campaign, 83% said yes. And it's based upon this that the council and the board of directors for the foundation gave us the green light to move forward. So clearly we're not moving forward to that $20 million. Clearly we're not going to move forward to those goals as were outlined in that original case statement. So please be aware of that. I do like this quote here. Done properly, this will be a unifying goal if local congregations see the value proposition to themselves and their communities. So I do like the idea that we can rally around a campaign, and that can be part of our common ground that we share together as a conference. So we go into, that was all, by the way, this is all the, again, the findings of the the interviews. I'm handing up my hand as a phone because they were phone interviews. The e-survey findings are similar. We see here a little bit more the positive is still there. There was a little bit more in the mixed category for us. We see here in this case is the special funds request wind up toward the bottom of interest. New ministry development is at the top of interest. The others play out kind of as they were in the other piece. And again, here the capital campaign is the $20 million a realistic goal. Unsure at 60%, yes at 30%. Should the campaign move forward? Yes, at 62%. So that's what we plan things off of. So here are the key takeaways here, and this is what I really want to share with you. And again, I know you can read this for yourself, but I'm going to read it just so that I know that it's been shared. Funds for clergy education and new ministry development have emerged as the highest priorities among interviewees. Many also feel that lay members should benefit from education funds. So please hear that, but that will be where the priority will be. The majority of respondents prioritize funds to support retired clergy, but acknowledge that this component may not excite potential donors and will need to be accompanied by more inspirational campaign component. Here again, you're hearing some of that internal pieces, internal directions to us, right? So please understand that some of this is aimed at, if you're going to do this, be aware of this type of language. While most interviewees acknowledge the historic importance of the legacy properties, many questions having 60% of the total go allocated to brick and mortar rather than people. Many speculated as to how long these properties could be supported and to what end. And those are all very good questions and thoughts. The Papamakua rated as the most contentious issue, with close to half of respondents marking this as a low priority. Mentee interviewees mentioned that the difficult relationship between AHEC and the conference and feel the issue of the Papamakua needs to be resolved. So that has become a priority to address and get resolved. So please hear that as well. Leadership, a well-respected group. This is, I'm going to skip leadership because that what it means by leadership is who will guide the campaign, leaders within the conference. So I'm going to skip that. That's a total internal note to those of us who are working on the campaign. Prospects, while most interviewees would consider a gift to the campaign, the gift indications do not support the feasibility of a $20 million goal at this time. The current lack of awareness of the conference foundation and their work, along with the prioritization of giving to local congregations, will hinder widespread participation in the campaign at this time. This marks out some of the, this is why we need a year of donor development before we jump into the campaign. And then plan. I don't worry about the plan, that's another internal note. So the reality is $20 million is not within our goal. $8 to $10 million are within our reach. And so that will be our goal for our capital campaign, will be around that $8 to $10 million mark. If they listen to me, I'm going to say, let's go for 10, because if we go for 8, we made 8. But if we go for 10, we can make 8 and possibly 10. So they'll hear that. So here are the recommendations. The majority of the respondents believe the conference should move forward with the campaign. Conference and foundation leadership are well respected throughout the conference. The majority of respondents indicate a willingness to make or consider making a gift to the campaign, and there is clear sense of the need for the conference to undertake a fundraising endeavor, although it will be at a lower level than that $20 million. And because it's at a lower level, there's a reason why this page is blank, is to remind myself to say this. Because it's at a lower level, it also means that a redefining of the goals has to take place. So here we're getting, I'm going to outline the next steps, the next foreseeable step. I'm going to skip this slide. I couldn't get these slides to move around on me, so I had to renumber them. This is, if you see, a slide number 2 right there. So I'm going to jump down to slide number 1, because this is the next step. Review, refine, and revamp the campaign case support. So Now that we've gotten the green light to move forward, following the AHA Pa'aina, at which time we'll have a new iteration of both the Conference Foundation Board of Trustees and the Conference Council. We will then pull a subcommittee made of members from both of those entities to do this review, refining, and revamping of a case for support. And that group will set then the ultimate goals and priorities for the capital campaign. You can see the priorities as they came out of the interviews are listed here. Whether that remains or not, I do not know. I don't want to put words into the mouth of that group that is yet to be formed. So that's the next step, is this place. That step will take place sometime this summer, right? AHA Pa'aina is in June. That means July, August, or September, this group will be drawn together and will begin that work. Then, now we get to step number 2. As noted, we need to do some information. We need to do some ways to help people understand what it is the conference is about, what it does in between the AHA Pa'aina and things of that nature. So there's a lot of work here, and you didn't see it because it was an internal note, but that work will probably take 9 to 12 months, right, of this. We're calling it donor development, but it's really helping to put out there these missing pieces that were identified by our survey takers. And then once that's done, then we will recruit the campaign leadership. And now this campaign leadership, or 10 to 15 people within the conference, that will be guiding the campaign. And that will be people on every island that will help us do that. And there'll be some of the people knocking on doors to ask for donations and things of that nature. More than likely, I do think I can say this and it'll be true, more than likely this will be a hybrid campaign that will see us knocking both on the doors of individuals who have indicated that they're willing to give a gift, in the doors of congregations, in ways that we might work together in fundraising with the congregation, and then split that fundraising 50-50 between the fundraising and the capital campaign. You'll hear more about that as we begin to dig down those lines. The one piece that's not here is that, and this will be a step that takes place, it's actually a step between kind of a 1.A step, and that is we will be hiring somebody to lead the capital campaign. This campaign is probably a 5 to 6 year endeavor, maybe 7, depending on if we add a year after the capital campaign winds up, right? If we still need a person in the place to help lead the capital campaign, somebody who has training and works with, and so knowledge of, experience in fund development and capital campaigns in particular. We don't have that person on staff, and we don't have the bandwidth. This is what I need you to hear. I need you to hear. When we get to the AHA Pa'aina and the budget for the conference this year, you will see there is already an outline of some budget that is available for that position. We're splitting it between the conference and the foundation, so it's also in the foundation budget line item as well. We are borrowing against the future. It is assumed by Andy and I that the person doing the capital campaign, we are going to build within that capital campaign the funds that cover that person's position. So if you're wondering where the funds to cover the position of a capital campaign coordinator is coming from, it's coming from the future and the assumption of a successful capital campaign that includes that amount of money that will cover that position for 6 to 7 years. So that's where that financing is coming from. If we don't do a good job with this capital campaign, then that person will clearly not have a reason to stick around and will leave us pretty quickly, and that will give us a heads up as to what we're doing and what we need to do in rethinking things through. So just be aware of that. So that's kind of the deeper dive into the feasibility study. Any questions that you all might have?
David, this is Kyle. I have a question.
Yes.
In your slide number 2 that came before slide number 1, I think. Anyway, the upside down triangle, the medical debt reduction was, third from the bottom or something like that. The medical debt reduction, as I recall, was an articulation of the desire to set aside 10% or a percentage of the funds raised for giving away, right? For donating to something that is not us. So its ranking within that pyramid makes me wonder whether it was about medical debt reduction or about the commitment to give away 10% to that which is not us. Do you have a sense of whether there is, like, which side that lands on? Is there commitment to giving away money? Just give it away if we raise it?
I'm trying to pull up some long ago conversations. So I'm hoping I'm capturing this correctly. One of the issues was why medical debt reduction, why not one of the other pressing issues within Hawaii. The other one I do think was why are we adding a missional component to this? Is just more money we're having to raise. My assumption, I shouldn't say my assumption, my advice when we finally get that committee pulled together that's going to refine things, my advice to them is actually going to be to let medical debt reduction go and let the missional component be the work we do. If we're invited in to work with a local congregation, let that be the missional component, that 50% of the money that raised working with a local congregation, we get 50%, they get the missional component would be the 50% they get. My concern is, while I am concerned about medical debt reduction, my bigger concern is that anytime we raise funds, there needs to be a missional component. Because God calls us to always stretch beyond ourselves and into the communities that often don't darken our door. So as long as there is a missional component, I am satisfied, personally speaking. But ultimately, all of that's going to be decided by that team that gets pulled together this coming Sunday or summer. Other questions, thoughts, or ideas? Well, please be aware that as things develop, we'll do our best to communicate those out so that you can kind of track where things are. In my mind, the timeline is probably this coming year. We're focusing on some of that internal work that needs to be done, along with probably seeking out and hiring a capital campaign director that will be with us throughout this. And then starting with AHA Pa'aina 2023, seeing a launch into the formal campaign itself. And a capital campaign has a couple of phases. There's a quiet phase in which some money is raised ahead of time. We're actually already, I hate to say it, we're actually always in that phase, but we already got some money raised ahead of time, and we're excited about that. And then there's the loud phase in which we come knocking on your door and asking you to participate in the vision, that will be a part of that capital campaign. So so please be between here and next summer. Then it'll just be we pulled together the team, we've hired this person, and then as information becomes available, it comes out to you. But it won't be the hot and heavy stuff that we typically associate with a capital campaign at this time. Any other thoughts? Yes, Ron. Yes, Ron, that's you. Yes.
I don't mean to start a discussion, but I wanted to, I felt I need to make a comment on the Papamakua thing, because for me, and I think for most people in the AHEC, it is a commitment of the past that has been made. And so it's not like looking forward into the future and saying, what do we want to do? And so I sense there is a difference in the understanding of what this Papamakua item is and how it fits into this, visioning what kind of things you want the future of the church to be doing. So I just wanted to put that comment in. I don't mean to raise a discussion, but I felt I needed to say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you for the comment. We will be bringing that comment forward as well. I think there's a lot of discussions that need to be had around the Papamakua with the right people at the table. And so thank you for that. I appreciate that. Others? If not, thank you for your time today. If something pops up later on, feel free to email, and we'll happy to, if I don't know the answer, we're happy to go and run down the answer and get it to you. Thank you if you did participate as a e-survey person or as an in-person, I'm saying in-person, a telephone interview or Zoom, however they conducted them. Thank you as well. As you've seen, your input has been heard and will shape the future piece around this capital campaign. So thank you all. God bless you and have a great day.